start right now. Oh, hold on.
Sorry about that.
Okay, who's? Oh, what happened here?
I'm here. My computer's acting weird. Here we go.
Okay, all right. Hello, welcome to another. I thought it was something I did. Okay, welcome to another edition of the Willy Bragg Show. I am your host, Willy Bragg. Today, once again, we had Jamarr Jabari coming back here from the Jamarr Jabari podcast, and we're going to discuss about whether we have a China crisis or not. And I think this is a very important topic because you know um, there's too much fear mongering about China. Yeah, spoiler alert. There's just too much
Yep.
paranoid fear mongering about China. So I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Willie. Good to see you again. Um,
Absolutely.
I gotta say, also, I realized that there was something that happened in Ecuador as well too that I want to mention real quick. With Guillermo Lasso, a right-wing president who was about to be impeached, removed from power. Um, he removed the assembly, from my understanding, so he won't be impeached, and he has like 6 months in power before they're able to do anything else. And I noticed just off of the back how the U.S. is just so like, oh, we're still proud of relations that we have with Ecuador and all this stuff like that, and they're so nice, and they're not saying anything wrong. When just a while ago, this year, when Peru president um, did the same thing, but he was left leaning, they automatically threw him under the bus. And now you got the CIA paying for the coup there and arming and assisting the repression, which we know that that's what's going on. Like just the difference and contrast there is very hypocritical and exposing, and people pay attention to that.
The United States government seems to take exception to any government in south of the border in Latin America that's remotely left of center. They think it's the end of the world, and they're like, "Oh, we got to do something about this little problem here."
Right.
Whether we're talking about something as as vanilla as Lula's government, which is basically a down the line social democratic government, to
Really
whether we're
is.
talking Maduro or they're still obsessed about Cuba to this day.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just par for the course. But if it's a right wing government, well, we got a good working relationship with them. Blah, 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 blah.
Right.
That's just par for the course of how the U.S. do things.
Right. And I'm not fully convinced that they're fully backing um, Guillermo Lasso at all. I feel that they are seeing that he's weak and they're going to ride this out, and they may find somebody else to replace him. But it's people should pay attention about how right winger could just not get ridiculed at all. And you see the indigenous tribes, the indigenous party that actually ran the candidate. I can't think of their name right now, and I don't want to disrespect their name. They ran the candidate and everything, and you might see some repression from the state killing innocent people that are going to protest this. So it's very important to look at that. And this does coincide with China because when you look at who are the people in Latin America that are left, like me and you, their ties are most likely towards countries like Russia and China because they are tired of the bullying. They're tired of the IMF. So excuse me. They're tired of being dictated what they should be doing, and if they don't, you see sanctions and blockades like what happened to Cuba. And that's why we have something called the BRICS nations now. And it's giving these people an alternative instead of dealing with the narrow, the petro, the American dollar, which they can give sanctions towards. Chinese currency, Russian currency, and now we hear about Latin currency. Excuse me, well, unlike everybody, you see here that they're getting an option to feed and help their people, um, and this coincides a lot with the issues that the U.S. has with China because China is a big actor. I mean, the BRICS. From last time I read, the BRICS Bank, the World Bank, is actually in Shanghai, China, and the head of that bank is one of the former presidents on the left side of Brazil, which that definitely grinds the U.S. gears. I mean, the CIA. We know the history of how the CIA has been involved with the dictatorships of Brazil as well too. So it's a very, very, very interesting time before we get into the detail. Very interesting time with the BRICS.
Yeah, I mean, think about it is that that I mean when the U.S. kind of call it, yeah, it didn't have to be this way with the U.S. I mean, it
Right.
didn't have to be this way,
It did not.
and when the U.S. runs across some horrible times or tough times, and we're going to be wondering why is this happening to us, they got to look and do a little self reflection. And I don't want to see bad things happen to this economy because we're all going to be affected. You're going to be affected. I'm going to be affected. We're all going to be affected. But what the thing about it is, I mean, just look at the incursion of misery that's been caused for the
Right.
past several decades around the world. I can't really see any long term gain good from U.S. or okay 90 99% of the times I can't, I mean, and maybe the accidental 1%, you know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're definitely going to have to humble ourselves. What you're saying, like it's going to get a time where we're going to have to learn. Everyone has got to learn that we're no longer that world power that the U.S. keeps saying they are, and there's going to come, hopefully, it doesn't get as bad as we think before that actually
Agreed.
comes to pass. Um, I'm sorry, you're going to say something. Go
No,
ahead.
after World War II, the British Empire pretty much slowly dismantled itself. And I don't know if it was such a bad thing that the British Empire dismantled itself. I mean, what happened after World War II in Great Britain, and when they became less involved in the world and became a little more humble, got a little more humbled. Um,
Right,
what did they do? They gave everybody health care. I mean, they done certain things like that, certain things that oh, we're still trying to grasp with. I mean, we can't even get a damn public option, and that's still considered controversial in this country. That's
right,
sad.
right. And the Red Scare is just so strong. Like we see a lot of Americans just afraid to even, now it's different. There's more of acceptance, but you see a lot of Americans afraid to even want to, have universal health care, and they were just leading out who's going to pay for that. Who's going to pay for that for so long and so many lives in this first world nation? We're the only first world nation that does not have universal health care. That has literally gotten down to that
Yeah.
we need, and that that's our legacy for Americans. The oligarchs of Americans, they take our debt, but we lead in debt in all types of ways, especially with healthcare and student loans, stuff like that.
Former Congressman Ron Dellums of California once said he believed that South Africa would have universal health care before the United States, and that was during the days of apartheid.
Oh,
And now South Africa does have. I think South Africa's on their way to
yeah,
develop. I know that they're developing it. So
yes,
yeah.
yes.
So
South Africa is also a very strong um, partner for China. They're part of the BRICS nations. Um, and what we're seeing in Africa is the tone changing and people are pivoting towards China. I mean, how many countries have signed on to the initiative? The Building Road Initiative, which they call the New Silk Road. It's just that we're seeing so many successes with China now. Foreign policy, I see a statesman in Xi Jinping, and I wish that the U.S. would have a statesman. But it's like, when was the last time we had a statesman? Would you call maybe Kennedy as close of being what we would call a statesman? If any, would he be that person? Or maybe Jimmy Carter after his presidency, because he have done a lot on revealing a lot of things after his presidency. But we don't really have a statesman. But you see that in Xi Jinping. Um, and I think the U.S. is more. This is not even the thing. I see that the U.S. is more fearful of China now because they are a huge obstacle in the imperialist goals that they want to keep in control and accomplish.
it's interesting when it comes to this whole foreign policy thing. And I was in Fiorella, and I were discussing this when I had her on the show a few weeks ago. Um, Whereas the stop clock given the right time of day here in America for the right wing is their opposition toward the war in the Ukraine Russia.
Mhm.
A lot of them, not every one of them, but a lot of them are hawkish on China. And
Yeah,
don't they realize that if you fuck with China, you're still going to be fucking with Russia?
right,
Yeah,
right.
and I don't understand. I just don't understand how they don't realize that. You
No,
know,
they don't. They think that everyone is still separate. I mean, Henry Kissinger tried to warn them. I don't want to ever try
even
to,
Henry Kissinger.
of all animals and war criminals, Kissinger did try to warn them. You do not want China and Russia to ever become friends because they'll be unstoppable. But what did we do? We showed two different systems: a socialist system and a capitalist system, in the East, that we will be aggressive to you no matter what. And now we're seeing them being friends when they are ideologically different now. So that's kudos to America for being the biggest asshole in the world to make two different systems become friends. And it's kind of interesting because you hear Xi Jinping talk about this bond, and Putin as well. They talk about these bonds that they have together, how they've got each other's back, they're bros, and I'm just like, Jesus, what? Who in the world would have thought that would be a thing? But it is, even though you have Putin, who is very ideologically um, a Republican, from what I have read on how his policies are and how he conducts himself as a politician. He's more of like a right wing Republican, and then you see Xi Jinping, who is a Marxist, a left leaning uh, president. In fact, he is very open on saying that he wants to bring China back to Marxism. So how were the two able to come together? It had to be the U.S. It had to be the dragon, the American dragon, U.S. That just goes around scorching the earth. One third of the world sanctioned. One third of the world starving because of us. It had to be. So honestly, like I really don't know what the future holds. But I really do hope that honestly, looking at this, that I mean, what do you think? What do you think is going to come out of this before we talk about TikTok and all? What do you think
Well,
is going to?
well, if everything I'm hearing, I'm a little hopeful about a peace deal.
Mm,
Um, by the
no
end of
World
the,
War Three. I
oh,
hope.
yeah, there's no World War III that might even be able to prevent a second Cold War with Ukraine and Russia situation, with China intervening because China brokered a peace between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and that was very impressive. And I think
Yeah.
some people in the United States think they would be like, oh, the sky's falling. No, no, that I
No.
mean. No, you don't want countries like at each other's throats. No, I think that is a good thing. That should
Yeah.
be a good thing. Um,
Yeah.
and in fact, I'll go as far as to say that Iran would be probably a very positive influence on Saudi Arabia. But
Right.
a lot of Americans are ignorant about Iran and Saudi Arabia.
Right.
We're harsh on Iran, but we're soft on Saudi Arabia. And
Who was so much more barbaric
well,
in
Saudi
many
Arabia,
ways.
all the terrorism in the world against the West came out of Saudi Arabia. Iran
Right.
practically commits no terrorism
Yeah.
against the West, but we're still pissed off about what happened in 1979. We still got their money, and we still kick them while they're down. And
Yep.
and and the one thing Obama did that was correct on foreign policy was the peace treaty, and because Trump wanted to appease the neocons within the GOP and wanted to appease the evangelicals who are
Right.
also neocons,
Right.
they went and pulled out of the peace treaty, and you know, and the peace treaty was working. Peace treaty was working.
It
And I
was.
mean, they were abiding by it and everything. And
They had inspectors come in. They passed their inspections.
yep,
Um, and it with Iran, who was also a huge um, part of where it comes to a friendship with China. Iran even like went to bat with trying to make sure that they abide by it, and they still got screwed, like you said. And these sanctions, you saw even Europeans, certain countries were still dealing with Iran because they felt that these sanctions were unfair. So that shows you exactly how unjust um, the world sees how the U.S. just likes to pick and choose who to bully on today and who to starve and everything. Both of us were not pro Iran's government, but we know for a damn fact that what they say about Iran's government is not all the way true.
absolutely, absolutely. We know
They're nothing in comparison to that kingdom
Yeah, we
in
know the
Saudi Arabia.
problem goes back to 1953, what the CIA did in Iran. I
Right.
mean, yeah,
Masada.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. So I mean, that's where the problem started, and they're like, they like to throw Khomeini. Well, the Ayatollah Khomeini was an early supporter of the Shah, and they
Yeah.
had a riff in their relationship.
Yeah. And a lot of people I see now talking about how it was better under the Shah. That's not what I read or was told. Like that was brutal. The fact that people in the U.S. are saying, "Oh, they need someone like the Shaw to run around," like, dude, no, stop. Why are we always trying to rehabilitate war criminals and dictators? Like, do not do that, man. Don't do that.
Go back to the early 1950s. Then we're getting to progress.
Right,
Yes,
right.
yes. So, yeah.
Yeah, and so let's TikTok. Before I lose my place, sorry about that.
No
There's
problem.
just so much. For Willy Bragg's audience, as you know, because you listen to him, there's just so much that China has in common, and also has in play with all these nations that we're talking about. So it's a big deal to talk about the relationship because a lot of people don't talk about the relationships. It's always China's doing this, China's doing that, and they don't really hear how China's is involved on the world scale. Um, and TikTok, dude, TikTok doesn't even operate in China. Like, and TikTok doesn't even give their information to the Chinese government at all. TikTok is an independent company that does the same things, collecting data, all that stuff that Facebook and social media does. Here, um, Twitter, um, all these types of American platforms, they do the same thing. And my thing is, what you see, and you actually heard Ocasio Cortez kind of talk about that. What are they doing with the information that they have here in America? They're doing a lot of data is like the new oil. They're selling it. They're able to control it. Google searches, all these things has to do with the information they're receiving off of our social media platforms, and we have no choice but to abide to them because we need those platforms, especially how we're on YouTube and Facebook right now, really, because we have no choice but to use them. And I guess the real answer is, oh, we don't want the U.S. to have our data, then we have to stop using these companies. But you can't. You have no choice, and that's what they want with TikTok. That they're being so racist and xenophobic and reactionary because they can't control TikTok. So they'll blatantly lie and say that, oh, TikTok's giving their information to the Chinese government when there's really no evidence and also proof that that's totally the opposite. And it's
What can China do with my data against me? I mean, what is it that that in my searches? I think that the United States can probably do more against me than China could in many ways. Not that I have anything to hide or anything like that, but you know,
right.
they're more likely to make trouble for me than China could. I mean, China's no position to,
Yeah.
but the United States would be. Because my basic politics, our basic politics.
Right.
If you question the status quo, you question the establishment in any way that's outside the duopoly bubble.
Right.
They're going to go and make they'll see you and want to make an example out of you.
Right. Yeah, they will. Um, they need the data so they can be able to find ways to control the narrative, and they need the data so they can be able to control you, just like you said, Willie. They have all these AI preventative, not AI, but like software that have preventative crime and stuff, for online, so they can do a 50-50 chance on prosecuting someone that they think was in danger of doing a crime, and they need the data to do that. There's a lot of stuff in the future that they want to work on to try to control, and when AI is rising and if they actually get this control, imagine how they could use AI in their advantage with media, with social media, online, and everything. Instead of it just being me and you giving our opinions, they could use the AI to alter all that and create new things. Um, I was just listening to Whitney Webb um, interview. She's a journalist.
Mhm.
I was listening to, you know who Whitney Webb is, right?
Yeah, of course.
Everybody that knows who Whitney Webb is knows who Whitney Webb is. I listened to her interview on there was some podcast. I can't think of it right now, but she was like just going into details about how important data is and what they can use it for. And TikTok is the most popular social media out there right now. They have more millions of people on that platform than any other platform. So it's like a gold mine to the United States. They need that, and it will be one win against China as well too, to help push the war. But they want all these bases.
Well, it's kind of like whether we're talking about TikTok or a silly balloon going across the United States, as if that balloon is gathering information. When you got China's got satellites in outer space,
Right.
anything that China wants from the United States, they can get from their satellites.
Right.
I mean, and you got people in this country was like, why don't we just go there and just shoot that balloon down right away? What? I mean, it's just kind of like, well, we don't want an international incident for starters,
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not trying to defend the Biden administration, but I thought it was right to wait and wait and wait and wait and wait, on that, I
Right.
mean, but you have somebody said they wanted to go and blow up the balloon right there from the get-go. You don't know what's up there in the balloon. You don't know who was in the balloon. You don't know, you had to make sure that there will be no international incident because of it.
Right. Exactly. I get that, and I understand their concerns. And a lot of people think that spying is just it's very facetious, and every country spies on each other.
Every one of
they
them.
do. So I wouldn't be surprised that China is spying on us. I wouldn't be surprised that Russia is spying on us, or even South Africa is spying on us. That's what
Britain spies on us. We spy on England. I mean,
right.
France, spies on Germany, and they spy on Italy, and every country, the close allies spy on each other. NATO countries spy on each other all the time. I mean,
Ukraine spied on us. So
exactly.
What is the issue? Everyone is.
This is nothing new under the sun. I mean, and in that's the only area where Russiagate's probably true. That they spy on us, sure, but we spy on them, but only on a micro level, on a small level. No more than any other country.
Anyone out there that's saying that Russia hasn't spied, no, they have, and we spy on them too. We spy on every single body. We spy on each other.
Exactly.
Our government wants to know everything. That's why Edward Snowden is in Russia right now, because he exposed that. But I think it's very important that we continue to have these conversations and reach people, no matter how annoying it is, because it opens people's eyes. And if we can't reach anybody, it's all right. We can't reach anybody, but it's all about having these conversations, because what they're putting out there in the media, like a lot of people that I know that are so well-hearted, they're just to the point where they just started just following, believing. And you mentioned China or Russia, it's mentioned in such a negative way, and people are talking so much racist and genocidal rhetoric towards China and Russia. It's like the U.S. has won with their propaganda. They want to make us just fear people that we don't understand, but they are culture and they are working class people just like we are. They're just overseas, and we have more in common with them than we have with these rich people that are so praised here.
Exactly. And when I hear people, I mean, the people that needs to be dismissed are the ones that are talking about the first use of nukes. I mean, anybody who talks about nukes should be dismissed. But I mean, gosh, when I hear people talking about first use of nukes, I mean, or sending ground troops, I'm like,
Why?
Yeah.
They don't know what they're saying. They don't know what they're asking for. No one's going to win a nuclear war, people. Maybe you think, but no. Those nukes go off, the planet's done.
Even those little short, what they call tactical short, what they call this? Is the short range tactical nukes that might blow up a town or a city and don't go beyond it. I mean, one of those goes off, that's bad enough,
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I want to say that the planet's done because they'll just, we're done. The planet's going to survive. The planet over time, millions of years later, is going to go back to the way it is and
Agreed.
probably give new life. So we're talking about ending our existence. And the US does not care at this point. This is what they sound like. They just think that they're going to win. Biden is a very dangerous man in office. Um, People hate me for saying this, but I'm going to say I feel that Biden right now is more dangerous than even Trump was, and I hate Trump. I despise him because he's not giving in. He's more war hawkish. You see all of these U.S. bases being opened, reopened, and built over in the Asia Pacific area. They're weaponizing Japan. Really? They are weaponizing Japan. I want people to understand, like, we're talking about another imperialist country that was our enemy. We're weaponizing, and their party still hasn't changed, Willie, right? Like, it's still the original party from when they were imperial, right? I want
Well,
to make sure that's clear
yeah,
enough. Gotta look into it.
I'm not so sure about that. But what I am sure about is that when you look at his record, Biden's record, he did vote for the Iraq War.
Yeah,
And I mean, and he's while the Republicans act like he's Bernie Sanders in disguise, which he's not, and Bernie Sanders is not what I thought he was
yeah,
anyway. But the thing about it is that Biden, for all practical purposes, is just a regurgitation of George W. Bush and Dick Cheney.
yeah. And they
Yeah,
murdered, like, murdered thousands of Middle Easterns. Actually, over a million. So I'm very afraid of what Taiwan might have to deal with. They might become a sacrificial lamb to U.S. imperialism and I say that because that's exactly what it is. When you look at the polls of Taiwanese people, hey, the prime minister literally stepped down a few months ago because the poll they gave out, they were trying to say you're either with Taiwan or you're with China. And majority of the people said that they were with China. You got to see, the culture, Americans, that their family members live there. There's people that work in the mainland that commutes from Taiwan to the mainland. They have a lot of connection. There's no disconnect. And the only people who are leading this is the Taiwanese problematic ass government in the US. I mean, it's funny when you see Macron, who has been all 10 toes down to fight Russia and bankrupt his country, just like every other European. He's even like against aggression against China, which is surprising to me. Um, but do everybody see this way? No. You got the EU talking about actually sanctioning China, which will basically starve themselves. you, you sanction China, EU, you're going to starve your people more. It's just not
yeah,
scary.
yeah. Yeah. With the sanctions and everything, it's the sanctions going back to Russia. I mean, the sanctions and the actually had it's the first time I see it had a reverse effect. It actually improved the Russian economy. Yeah,
It did,
it was a favor to them.
right?
Yeah,
Putin said in his speech, "We don't care if you sanction us," and he was damn right
yeah,
because nothing changed. I mean, you have people that live in Russia, journalists that are always saying, like, dude, it's the same right here. The only thing that's changed is like the franchise names and all that stuff, but we're still good. We
yeah,
gotta get new debit cards, but we're still good.
yeah. So I mean, just I mean, I just think that this rattle sabling with Russia and China, it has always been very unnecessary. I mean, and
Yeah,
all that, and just just but partly it's partly because the one mistake the United States made, it was not a mistake for the United States to become friends with China. Probably one of the best things Nixon did.
Right.
But
I agree.
what was the mistake was the deepening economic partnership, which kind of and this is not against China, but it it sucked the jobs out, and it's a worldwide trade, and outsourcing, not just China but all over. It just
Right.
China was just one of the many countries that here, but which is ironic because United States, United States have a selective policy toward China, but they have a way different policy toward Cuba. I have never figured that out, but anyway,
Right.
um, a lot of these jobs could have been saved right here, and didn't have to leave here. Of course, there
Mhm.
were things that could have been done, like if we would have had universal health care all along.
Right.
That would have kept the jobs here, because the labor costs right now with the status quo is the reason why jobs leave here, because of medical inflation, which wouldn't
Right.
be a thing if we had universal health care, things of that nature. But
Right.
people be like, oh, it's those unions, when
And it's not unions,
we don't have
people.
unions in this country. Let's
Right.
face it, compared to everywhere else.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Cuba. Cuba, like about 91% of their workforce is unionized. So
Yeah,
what are they complaining about?
yeah. So and thing about it is, I mean, just in terms of civil liberties, Cuba is actually more of a democracy than China, because
Yeah,
and
I
you
agree.
compare the social credit system, they don't have anything like that in Cuba,
Mm.
and I think the social credit system they have in China is based on a low tech model that exists currently in the United States,
Mhm.
because
Yeah, I need
every
to look into that part. Yeah, I agree with you on the Cuban democracy part. They were able to, you know, revamp, not revamp, but destroy their constitution and create a new constitution. And they didn't do that by just the government deciding. They actually had held meetings with the workforces all over the country, and asked for input on how the Constitution should go. And they did that for a while. And then they compiled their ideas together, and through the people, they created a new Constitution. Jesus Christ. If only the United States would do something like that. A lot of people, especially right wingers, they're always complaining about the Constitution. Oh, we need to bring the Constitution back. We want to bring the Constitution to its original uh, place at whatever, stuff like that. And like, dude, there's countries that literally did that. Imagine if we did that. Imagine that.
constitutional system is fine. It just needs our system just needs to be improved. Where there's a flaw in our U.S. Constitution, can be easily corrected by adding an amendment to make it better. Like have an amendment to guarantee medical care for all.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
can and I can actually give a couple examples on the U.S. Constitution currently where you can call for medical care for all, because I would say cruel and unusual punishment, the Eighth Amendment. I mean, our current system, the market system violates the Eighth Amendment. I think the 13th Amendment, because when your job is tied to your health care, that's involuntary, is involuntary servitude.
Mm.
You know,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah,
it affects our commerce. I mean, there's a lot that's tied into it. So,
yeah.
um, just some of these things I have to learn as talking points. Years ago, when I was debating some people from the John Birch Society back in college, they whooped my ass in a debate over this issue, and I was like, never again,
Never again.
never again. I'll let people whoop my ass in a debate.
Yeah. Oh, wait. The Nixon part. I had a thought when you were talking about how Nixon made friendship with China. And in that era, you saw China and Russia, they were not really seeing eye to eye. So Nixon, you know, that's how the one China policy started. People that don't know, when people question about, like, oh, is China's going to invade Taiwan? They don't have to. Taiwan has already been in the works of reintegrating back as a part of China. We've been seeing this since the one China policy came to existence. Um, and of course, I wasn't agreeing. If I was a leftist back in those days, if I lived back in those days, I would be like, why the hell is China say with Nixon? Well, China used the U.S. to their advantages. The U.S. used China to their advantage. They both used each other. I guess the U.S. thought that China was going to eventually come into the fold, drop all the communist rhetoric, and become a capitalist country, and privatize things so they could work more with them. But that didn't happen, and I think America, the American government, is pissed about that part. That's why I find it funny when you see Biden saying we respect the one China policy, which basically says Taiwan's a part of China. But then he's like, but if China invades, we're going to attack. They contradict themselves, which in their speeches. And like, I keep bringing that up because I want people to see the hypocriticalness. Nixon is the reason why we have a one China policy. I'm pretty sure it was all other entities, but China did not want to have the jobs come over or anything. We didn't want any part of doing anything until that one China policy was signed. None of none of that.
Yeah. Well, I would think about it is I just think that that I you know it, I I just think it's insane that people would want to rattle their sabers when it's never necessary to rattle sabers. But I mean, but especially right now when you have a situation in Eastern Europe to go and to really exacerbate the situation with China. I mean, I'm having memories
Mhm.
resurface that I almost forgot about in the 1990s growing
Share
up.
Willie.
I mean, I mean, it's like when I was growing up. I mean, I don't know if I mentioned. I know I mentioned this to a few other folks. I may have
Mhm.
mentioned this to you before. I'm not sure, but in the past, I've it's like during the Cold War, we worried about the Cold War. We worry about nuclear war eventually happening, and sometimes we really worried about it. And then there were days or there were times where we were kind of like, well, okay, it's unfortunate that we having a nuclear war, but at
Mhm.
the same time, it, at the same time, that's unfortunate that we could have a nuclear war. We went on with our lives, but there were times we had our moments where we were like, oh, this could really be the end. I
That
mean,
is absolutely scary.
yeah, and those memories have surfaced back into my mind again.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
For the first time in since I guess since since before Reagan, uh, uh, who I despise, by the way, but Reagan finally has a little bit of sense and listens to Mikhail Gorbachev, and I have my opinions on Gorbachev too,
Oh,
but
oh, no socialist like Gorbachev. He
yeah.
was the asshole that fucked everything up.
Well, I look at it this way. Um, I look at it this way. When I think about what happened in the 1990s in Russia,
Yeah,
what happened and how fucked their country was and
yeah.
everything. I'm like, I was like, I don't know if it was actually better for them because,
Hmm.
I mean, the country got ruled by oligarchs. I mean, and you know, the, uh, and I blame George Herbert Walker Bush for this because,
Hmm.
I mean, he imposed like a shock therapy on the economy where they had to like rapidly privatize everything and that was just too much of a shock for the people in the country, and a lot
Yeah.
of people's retirement became nothing. Just there was a lot of misery in the 1990s that it looks like they're just kind of getting out of right now in recently.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, when you look up at the death toll, based off what you're saying, I wanted to put numbers in for your audience. When you look at the death toll of what happened um, to Russia when the USSR collapsed, and they had to go and privatize healthcare and all these things, that's when a lot of Russians died. Um, I think it was like almost a million Russians died in that rechange because they were a socialist country and they were keeping their people alive and through socialist systems. So people had to relearn how to do capitalism, and then in that effect, a million Russians died. Like that's just absolutely scary for the 90s. So when you see Scott Ritter talks about somebody like Putin, who we disagree on a lot of things politically about Putin, but he was one of the factors that was able to um, get that country back together under capitalism, sadly. But Russia is a lot more better now than it was in the 90s
He did
because of
renationalize a few industries, though.
right. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, to
yeah.
his credit.
And he also left certain spots in Russia to continue socialism within their areas, but not to like the point of like, oh, we're going to re-expand, but like just to keep certain programs that were there to stay. So because that's all those people know how to live. So he compromised a little bit. You would never see that in the U.S. The U.S. will hire someone like Sigmund Reed to just go around and just murder everybody that is leftist and just sell the country off to the U.S.
Yeah, yeah.
That would have been our solution.
No, no, yeah. Well, yeah, the right wing. I'm not right wing at all, but the right wing in other countries are a little more pragmatic than the ones here. Y- I
I
mean,
noticed, yeah.
yeah, I mean, when the stimulus took place in 2020, the stimulus, the first round of checks. I mean, you had Mitch McConnell, and most Republicans are thinking like Mitch McConnell. It's like, we don't want to give people any money. We're going to give people any money. I mean, that's the mentality. That's the average Republican right there. Whether they're Adam Kinzinger, the moderate guy from Illinois, or whether they're Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Right.
Oh, they don't want to give anyone. Huh. You know, that's my Mitch McConnell impression.
That's a great impression.
Yeah, I've been working on that for years.
Oh
Yeah,
God, Mitch
yeah.
McConnell, man, he
So,
is something else. I really
but
don't like that man.
Donald Trump. I mean, yeah, I mean Donald Trump may be the exception to the rule in that regard. But the thing about it is that that you wouldn't get that out of Ron DeSantis or Mike Pence or anybody like that. I mean, they're that it just I mean, you didn't really get that out of Joe Biden. I mean, there was you barely got 1,400 with the stimulus checks because it was still COVID crisis and there was a
Right.
little guilt tripping. But and I
He never
still
saw a
think that
check again after that.
we still needed some stimulus checks
Right.
and a couple of stimulus checks. I mean, in this country, the Democrats might still have been in charge, but they're too stupid to realize these things.
They are very. No, I agree. They are stupid. Let's just.
Yeah,
I'm not even going to try to get into time today.
yeah.
I'm like, I have a friend who is Palestinian who has family in Jordan. During COVID, they live in the U.S. as well too. But during COVID, they went back to Jordan to be
Hmm.
with their family. And they told me that around that time, the working class was receiving checks weekly. Um, Weekly, guys. one more time, weekly Americans. They were getting checks weekly. Canada as well. So many countries were actually giving out money to the people, making sure they're okay. And we just decided to let our people starve and then give people shit for accepting
Exactly.
these checks. And then scams happen. I mean, the feds, the federal government lost how much money with the PPP loans and stuff like that, and now they're trying to prosecute everyone. We just do everything so shitty. Like,
Yeah, it
before
was
you
done
even distribute money out properly.
ass backwards way you can imagine that CARES Act and everything. And
Right.
they really thought that the 1,200 and then you hear people say things like, "Well, Americans don't want to work anymore." I'm
Yeah.
so tired of hearing that. I'm
Jesus
like, no,
Christ.
Americans. Americans with this kind of unofficial general strike don't want to put up with a lot of shit anymore.
Right.
Yeah, and so any inconvenience that incurs from people not working, I'm like, it has my blessing. I'm like, they're just doing their part. They're doing it for their own reasons, but it's a passive aggressive general strike
Right.
in our hands. Yeah.
Right. And we're seeing that now because of what happened with COVID. Even my union, the Teamsters, but I don't work at UPS, but they're like leading the movement. You see the railroad workers, they had enough. God,
Yeah,
for Christ's sake, the railroad workers, I feel so bad for them. Like
me
all
too.
this shit going on. But you're seeing that the workers are getting organized and are fighting the man, because you want to say that we're not working hard enough when you're still producing wealth. I mean, BP alone made so much money during COVID. um, WWE made so much money during COVID while cutting their own talent. I covered that, because I'm a wrestling fan, so I had to cover that.
Right.
But it's still like you're making billions of dollars, and you're saying you don't have enough money in the budget. No, you're price gouging, and you're saying you don't have enough money in the budget during COVID. No, you were good. You made a lot of money. Amazon, didn't Amazon like go quadruple in sales, and they still got their people on food stamps.
But not
Oh, but
only
the
that, I
workers are
mean,
not working enough.
some of these companies were not even American companies. They even got some corporate welfare.
Corporate
And
welfare.
then they had the strings attached. Don't lay people off. They still lay people off. Some of these people need to go to jail for what they've done.
Right,
you
right.
know,
And
yeah,
they just get away with it with a smile on their face. And
yeah.
they got the working band blaming each other. Well, you quit. You don't want to work because you're getting checks home. Okay, maybe the unemployment, that was decent money, but it didn't last. People lost their jobs at the end of the day. People lost their houses at the end of the day. Like the rent moratorium, like the homelessness, like just increased. So your excuses being nothing.
I got radicalized from. I mean, I was kind of I mean, I was just a lukewarm kind of social democrat at that time, and then I just
Hmm.
kind of like, no, give them. We need to give everything. I mean, everybody needs to be guaranteed a house. Everybody needs to be guaranteed everything. I'm like, I mean, if you can do this extreme for those on the top, you can do this for everybody.
Right.
And so, I my perspective pretty much changed radically during COVID.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that's awesome because that shows that a lot of people saw it. They have the story that you do. They see more and more, and I think that COVID put us in a period where we had to literally look at it, and I don't think anyone can recover from that to this day. I mean, I know, for instance, myself, I lost drive in a lot of different ways when COVID happened. I was getting back into music, and I was doing shows and practicing and all this stuff. And when COVID happened, it took all that momentum away, and I still haven't gotten back.
I used to go to the gym all the time, and I was, I was in better physical condition than I am now. Although I'm in better shape now than I was a year ago, but not where I was at in my peak in 2016, 2017, 2018, that time period. I mean, I was like top of my game.
Word. And then COVID happened, and you were just like,
yeah,
what's the value?
And I did transition from a new job, and I did gain a little bit of weight, but and all of that because of the change of the schedule. But I got my act back together in early 2020, and I was getting slim again and all of that. And then COVID hit, and they shut the fucking gyms down. That was like, and you know, just kind of like,
yep, that's that.
yeah, it happened. So anyway, yeah, I'm going to have to go to work in a little bit. So
yep. This was great.
It's great having you here. I'm going to have you again, of course.
Hell yeah.
We have here on the chat line, we have Hot Retarded Chick. She says, "Hey Willie, hey Jamar."
Hello.
And we have Warren Extra Booyah. Hey guys. Hey
Come
Warren.
on my show, Warren.
All right. Let's see. We have and then Warren and let's see. Retarded Chicks saying hi to each other. Game.film and saying great stream. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Very
all
good.
Right.
We talked about it a lot. And I hope we did it in a way that was clear, because I didn't want to go down to the names and the eras, and I wanted to like give an understanding of a different point of view. And I think we did a good job.
I think it was a great job. Yeah, everything. I think that it was a great interview. Was that last week? Week before last, Victory Day that we. And I mean, I was a little hazy about Victory Day in regard that America didn't celebrate that. It was, and I'm just like, that was really.
Very interesting.
That was kind of a rude awakening there about that. So anyway, I guess we will I'll have you back on the show. We'll be discussing something else again.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
And have a good shift.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. All right. And everyone, be sure to check out Jamarr Jabari's podcast. I got all his information on the description box below. And you can just check out all his platforms. Subscribe to all his platforms. And if you like what you heard, please press like, comment. Feel free to share the content on this channel. Follow me on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook. I'm trying to get a Rumble channel, so if you could, please, my Rumble channel link is down there in the link below. Please follow me on Rumble so I can get up to 100 followers, so I can stream easily there as well. And until next time, remember, reject corporate media, and we'll be back. Take care. All right. Let me go ahead and do this.